Ghost towns, military zones, self-proclaimed kingdoms. These are 50 places that technically don't exist, but totally do. Starting off with number 50, the Korean Demilitarized Zone. The Korean Demilitarized Zone, or DMZ, is one of the most dangerous parts of the world, but the name is pretty wrong. It's the most heavily armed piece of land on Earth, and a new war could break out at any moment. But there's something else peculiar about it. On the North Korean side, there's a village called Kijongdong, full of brightly painted buildings. This so-called peace village was built as a nice-looking place just after the war, trying to entice Southerners to defect. But it turns out that the windows are painted on too. No one actually lives there, it's all propaganda. Number 49. Fleury-de-Vent-Douaumont, France. Fleury-de-Vent-Douaumont in northeastern France has a population of 0. About 400 people used to live there, but the town was destroyed in 1916 during the Battle of Verdun. Even over a century later, it remains unpopulated, but it stayed as a legally incorporated town though. By law, it's recognized as a village that died for France. It's a tourist site that hosts the Verdun Memorial, reflecting on the horrors of the Great War. Number 48, Oradour-sur-Glane in France. Another village in France saw the worst of another war, and it wasn't even on the front lines. Far away in Aquitaine is Oradour-sur-Glane, but it's actually 2 villages now. The one you might find on a map is the modern village, but the earlier one is nearby, in ruins. On June 10, 1944, the Nazi Waffen-SS rounded up and murdered 642 people in this village before wrecking it. Only a handful survived by playing dead. Oradour-sur-Glane was rebuilt after the war, but President de Gaulle ordered that the ruins of the old town remain on the original site as a memorial for the victims. Number 47. Varosha, Cyprus. There's a similar place to the Korean DMZ on Cyprus, but it's a different kind of cautionary tale. Varosha was once a luxury retreat for the rich and famous. Elizabeth Taylor or Brigitte Bardot would stroll around these parts. The resort town is still there, but as a decaying ruin. Things changed dramatically when Turkey invaded Cyprus in 1974. The fighting forced all 15,000 residents out, and they've yet to return because their town had the misfortune of being behind the lines. A small part of Varosha was only opened to tourism again in 2017, but you won't find any A-listers there now, for understandable reasons. Number 46. Wittenoom, Australia. War isn't the only thing that can wipe a town off the map. If you ever find yourself in Wittenoom in Western Australia's Pilbara region, you'll notice something peculiar. All mentions of this town have been wiped from the signs. But it's not because there's nothing left. It's just that Australia doesn't want you going there. This place used to be an asbestos mine, so the toxic fumes spread everywhere. It was evacuated in 1978, although a few people remained into the 2000s. The gem shop was still open in 2013, but is such a treasure worth risking your life? Number 45. Gilman, Colorado. Gilman was once a boomtown, with mining for gold, silver, lead, and zinc starting in the 1870s. This work continued all the way to 1984, when the mines were allowed to flood. It was a disaster. Toxic substances like lead, arsenic, and cadmium contaminated the soil and water leading to the Eagle River. The EPA had no choice but to close and evacuate the town. The abandoned houses are still in good condition though, rousing the interest of photographers who dare to go. Number 44. Bodie, California. The most famous boomtown of the gold rush period might be Bodie, California, founded in 1876. Its population soared and it became a symbol of the Wild West, with accounts of Western-style shootouts. But as the gold craze died down and harsh winters hit, the town began to dwindle. Bodie was described as a ghost town by 1915 and the last residents left in the late 1940s, but the town is remarkably well preserved almost 80 years later. That's because there are park rangers that keep everything maintained. You can still find it on Google Maps because it's a state park. Just don't expect to find any locals. Number 43. Centralia, Pennsylvania. Centralia still exists in the United States Census, but it has no zip code and you can't buy any property there. Why? Because there's a fire burning underneath it. This place was once a coal mining town, but in 1962 a fire in the mine broke out that will burn for at least another 250 years. The town was abandoned and property seized by the state due to dangerous carbon monoxide levels coming out of the ground. Existing residents were allowed to stay for life if they wanted. By 2020, only 5 remained. Number 42. Arkwright, England. Arkwright, in Derbyshire, England, technically still exists. It's just somewhere else. All that remains is a brick pillar and a plaque. It was once an industrial center with coal mining as its backbone. Unfortunately, that led to the discovery that the ground beneath the town was leaking methane gas at dangerous levels. The entire population was relocated in 1988 to safer ground outside the methane area. New Arkwright was finished in 1995, and the old town was demolished. Though, if you're willing to risk going, you can mark out some landmarks that vegetation has now reclaimed. Number 41. Pripyat, Ukraine. The Chernobyl meltdown in Ukraine is the most infamous artificial disaster of recent history, and near the epicenter is Pripyat. There were once 49,000 people here, but they all had to be evacuated. Some of them were exposed to radioactive fallout for 36 hours and suffered severe health effects. The buildings remain standing, but nature is rapidly reclaiming the area. You might still find it on a map, and it's safe enough to travel through if you don't plan to stay for long. But it won't be habitable again for up to 20,000 years. Number 40. Beichuan, China. We've seen man-made disasters up to now, but maybe no place has suffered worse luck in recent times than Beichuan, China. It was right on the fault line of a devastating 8.0 earthquake in 2008. At the tragedy's height, 2 school buildings collapsed that resulted in the deaths of 1,300 middle school students. The city suffered aftershocks of up to 6.1 on the Richter scale. Finally, there was a huge flood in 2013. The city was abandoned and is now considered a historic site for New Beichuan, where the people now live. All the old buildings are still there, though, in ruins. 80% of them were destroyed. Number 39. Billingsgate Island, Massachusetts. Given its Cape Cod locale, Billingsgate Island in Massachusetts made for a perfect fishing village. But in 1855, a storm came that was so powerful it cut the island in 2. Things didn't get easier from there. Even a 1,000-foot seawall failed to keep back the forces of nature, and the final residents left in 1912. You can still visit it, but this place is so obscure that you won't even find it on Google Maps. Number 38. Fordlandia, Brazil. Sometimes it's not a disaster that creates a ghost town. The dreams of eccentric millionaires can too. Fordlandia in the state of Para, Brazil is an example of this. Work began there in 1927 to supply rubber to the Ford Motor Company. But it was more than that for Henry Ford. He wanted a new kind of city with the same values he credited with making him so successful. But Fordlandia was a disaster from the beginning. The rubber trees couldn't survive in this environment. The economic rationale was soon gone, and when Ford's grandson, Henry II, took over the company in the late 1940s, he cut the albatross it had become, and the town fell into ruin. It's seen a boom in recent years, though, going from less than 100 people to 3,000 by 2017. Number 37. Santa Claus, Arizona. We've all heard of Christmas in July, but what about in the desert? Santa Claus, Arizona was founded in 1937 by the self-proclaimed biggest real estate agent in California, Nina Talbot. She had dreams of turning it into a resort town benefiting from the traffic on Route 66, but things didn't go as planned. Talbot sold the site, and no other developer got it far off the ground either, although the Christmas Tree Inn was praised. It was most popular as a destination for letters to Santa rather than for tourists, and it closed for good back in 1995. Number 36. Paradise and Winchester, Nevada. The Vegas Strip is famous for its casinos, hotels, and glittering lights, but it's not actually part of Las Vegas. It's in the unincorporated towns of Paradise and Winchester, Nevada. It's not for lack of trying, though. Las Vegas officials have tried to fold the Strip into the city limits for years, but casino magnates, Clark County voters, and even the Supreme Court of Nevada said no. The most recent attempt came in 2009. It probably won't be the last. With so much money out there, there's a good incentive to keep trying. Number 35. Gibsonton, Florida. According to the 2020 census, Gibsonton, Florida is fairly sizable with about 18,000 residents, but it was founded with a peculiar flavor. Its first settlers were called the Giant and his wife, the Half-Woman. Gibsonton was where all sideshow performers would spend their winters. It's not quite like that anymore, but you might still find a sword swallower here and there in this unincorporated community. Number 34, Whittier, Alaska. Far to the north is the city of Whittier, Alaska, and it's known as the town under one roof. Almost all of its 200 residents live in the 14-story Begich Towers, once an army barracks that's become a self-governing municipality. The post office is near the entrance and the police station is right down the hall. It might be a little cramped, but the views of the bay are apparently to die for. Number 33, Colma, California. Colma, in San Mateo County, California, is a real city of the dead. There are 1.5 million graves that you can find in rows upon rows. This is where most San Francisco residents will find their final resting place. If you're comfortable with that though, the 1,500 living people here say the town is pretty nice. Its motto? It's good to be alive in Colma. Maybe that's just a way to put on a brave face. Number 32, Bolinas, California. The Bay Area has more than one odd suburb. Bolinas is 12 miles, about 20 kilometers from San Francisco in a straight line, but the locals don't want to be known. They tore down road signs pointing the way to their village with such fervor that the county decided it wasn't worth the money to replace them anymore. It became a haven for hippies and others trying to get out of the mainstream, but it couldn't stop the almighty dollar. The area is hot property and real estate prices soared anyway. Airbnb came along and made things even worse. The combination of high-priced properties and soaring rents has pushed many of the original inhabitants who failed in their quest to stay off the grid by not incorporating. Number 31, Slab City, California. Slab City is located in Imperial County, deep in the Sonoran Desert. The name comes from the concrete slabs of Camp Dunlap, a World War II Marine Corps base. There's no taxes here. There's also no electricity or even trash pickup. Some call it the last free place. Others call it an enclave of anarchy. Squatters, survivalists, off-the-grid artists, and homeless people are the types you might find here, people who want to live beyond the mainstream. Number 30, Hell, Michigan. Some places can be hell to live in. Literally. Hell, Michigan is an unincorporated area that has no zip code of its own. It's part of the town of Pinckney's code. According to legend, it got its name in the 1840s, when one of its founders said it could be called hell for all he cared. The name actually stuck, and the town has embraced it. Weddings can take place in Devil's Church, and there's even a fake university called Damnation. Damn you. Get it? Number 29, Miracle Village, Florida. There's a remote place in Florida that's sort of the opposite of hell, at least in name. This is Miracle Village, a small, unincorporated community of 54 duplexes and 6 family homes. A former prison minister named Dick Withrow founded it in 2009 as a place for these people to try and get back on their feet after serving their time. He and his ministry have final approval for who lives there. Number 28, Nameless, Tennessee. Now take out a map of Tennessee and you might see something unusual. Nameless in Jackson County. The legend is that when its residents applied to a U.S. post office, they left the name of the place blank. The federal government stamped Nameless on it and sent it back, which is how the place got its name. If you do come across it, there's not much to do. The 2-room elementary school has been closed since the 1960s, and the general store is now a museum. Less than 100 people live here though, and they say there's no place like Nameless. Number 27, Burnt Corn, Alabama. It's one thing to say that something has no name, but a name like Burnt Corn? Really? It actually does exist, but only sort of. This place is so unusual that it only appeared on the US Census once, in the 1880s, so we don't know how many people actually live there. The post office was closed in 2002, and there's only an unofficial website. All we really know is that it was named after the 1813 Battle of Burnt Corn between the US Army and the Red Stick Creek tribe, which didn't take place there. Rather, it happened in Escambia County, to the south. Number 26, North Oaks, Minnesota. Farmhouses are some of the only things in North Oaks, Minnesota that you'll ever see. The town had about 5,100 residents in 2023, and they don't necessarily want to be marked on a map, and they really mean it. In 2008, the community threatened to sue Google for trespassing to get images for its Street View software. It could do this because the town is entirely privately owned, either by the North Oaks Homeowners Association or the North Oaks Company, and they're serious about keeping unwanted visitors out. Number 25. Asta Zero, Sweden. If you visit Asta Zero in Sweden, you might think you're walking the streets of New York. It is the world's most advanced testing ground for self-driving cars, and it's all owned by Volvo. It has stores, a replica of the Arc de Triomphe, and even Harlem. There are even cyclists for the cars to share the road with and avoid. It's best that accidents happen in a fake place rather than a real one. Number 24. End City, Michigan. There's a much smaller fake town across the Atlantic. It's only 32 acres, 13 hectares, and it looks remarkably like the University of Michigan at Ann Arbor campus. This is M City, founded in 2015. The campus mock-up is supposed to test self-driving vehicles too. That's why there are streets, intersections, railroad crossings, parking spots, anything you can find in urban or suburban America. Just don't expect any mail in any mailboxes you come across. Number 23. Fort Irwin, California. There are more secret fake cities that have serious purposes. Fort Irwin in California is bigger than the entire state of Rhode Island. Troops spend up to 3 weeks here before they're deployed. It simulates urban combat closely. That's why there's more than one fake city inside. Some of the facilities resemble buildings in Iraq, and since it takes place in the scorching Mojave Desert, it's a good preview of what troops might expect on the battlefield. Number 22. Agloe, New York. Agloe might be the strangest place on this list, as it's the one that started as fake but became real. In the 1930s, the executives at General Drafting, one of the big map-making companies at the time, created a map with a fictitious town based on their initials. Why? Well, to root out copyright infringers. Naturally, Agloe appeared on a map made by a competitor, Rand McNally, but there's an irony here. When Drafting threatened to sue, Rand responded that a general store was indeed now at the place the map indicated. The store went out of business shortly afterward, but it was enough to fend off the lawsuit, and Agloe continued on. It appeared on Google Maps as recently as 2014, but now the town that started as fiction and became real is gone again, though it still attracts curious folks interested in urban legends. Number 21. The Mars Desert Research Station in Utah. The Mars Desert Research Station in Wayne County is as close as you can get to living on the Red Planet without leaving Earth. It's privately owned, run by the Planetary Society. How can you survive with no oxygen in the air and create a self-sustaining colony with all the essentials like food and water? That's what the scientists here have been trying to do since the early 2000s. It might not be an incorporated town, but it's still visible on Google Maps. Number 20. The Turkish Republic of Northern Cyprus. Sometimes there are entire countries that technically don't exist and might not be found on a map, but they're still there. Remember Varosha? It's behind the UN buffer zone in the place called the Turkish Republic of Northern Cyprus. You won't find it listed on Google Maps though, because only Turkey recognizes it. Sure, the buffer zone is there, but a glance makes you wonder what it's protecting. Number 19. The Republic of Abkhazia. Look closely at Google Maps and you'll see a dotted line separating Georgia's mainland from its northwestern region. This is supposedly the Republic of Abkhazia. Russia carved it out during its invasion in 2008, but very few other countries recognize it. Number 18. South Ossetia. There's another dotted line just a little further east in Georgia. That's South Ossetia. Same deal with Abkhazia. Only a few countries recognize it, but with Russian troops to back up the carve-out, Georgia doesn't have a lot of options. Number 17. Transnistria, Moldova. You might have heard of a place called Transnistria. Well, you won't find it on Google Maps. It's not even called Transnistria in the search. But it is a very real place. Russian troops have made that clear since 1990. It's been a frozen conflict zone ever since, but that's not the only thing that's frozen. If you get in, you might think you stepped back in time to the Soviet Union. Number 16. The Republic of Somaliland. Somalia is also a place that's been in conflict for a long time, and part of that legacy is this place on its northwestern extreme, the self-declared Republic of Somaliland. It's been governed democratically since 1991, but no other country or international organization recognizes its independence from Somalia. You can still go there though, but it can be dangerous unless you're part of a guided tour. Number 15. Ladonia, Sweden. Somaliland does its own thing, but so does Ladonia in Sweden. It's less than a square mile, 2.5 square kilometers, and located in Kullaberg Nature Reserve. The controversial artist Lars Vilks created the sculptures Nimis and Arx here, and around them a microstate. Nobody actually recognizes it, obviously, but the sculptures are still there. Vilks himself may have died in 2021, but Ladonia claims almost 29,000 citizens from over 50 countries spread around the globe. It's even hosted microcons, conferences for micronationalists. Number 14. Užupis, Lithuania. The neighborhood of Užupis in Vilnius, Lithuania, sees itself as the country's artistic beating heart, so much so that it has its own constitution as the Independent Republic of Užupis. It's less than a half square mile, 1 square kilometer, but has a president, navy, and currency. The constitution is on display on plaques along Paupio Street. Oddly, it calls for people to not fight back, but also not to surrender, and that everyone has the right to have no rights. You can see why the Independent Republic started as an April Fool's joke. Number 13. The Principality of Sealand. The Principality of Sealand in the North Sea rests entirely on the World War II-era sea fort of HM Fort Ruffs. Since it's a man-made structure, it has little chance of being recognized internationally, but the UK government has been permissive. If you want to visit it, you'll need to talk to the Bureau of International Affairs. Number 12. The Sovereign State of Forvik. Located off the coast of the Shetland Isles in Scotland is the Sovereign State of Forvik. In 2001, a sailor named Stuart Hill was shipwrecked during his attempt to circumnavigate the British Isles, earning himself the nickname Captain Calamity. He didn't wait for rescue, though. He just said that the 2.5-acre, 1-hectare island he was on was its own independent country that he called Forvik. The basis of the claim was that it wasn't part of Britain, but still somehow part of the Norse Empire. It led to a long series of legal battles, as Hill said he was trying to inform Shetlanders of their ability to assert their legal rights and secede from the UK. He was convicted in 2011 of road traffic offenses for failing to register his vehicle or pay road taxes to the UK. It turns out the courts didn't buy his argument that Forvik was a free state, but he's still around, keeping Forvik as alive as he can. Number 11. Thalassa. On December 26, 1979, 14-year-old Robert Ben Madison declared independence for his second-floor bedroom in Milwaukee. He called it Thalassa, and just like that, a new nation was born. Since then, it's grown into one of the most elaborate micronations on Earth. Thanks to pieces in the New York Times, people started to become aware of the burgeoning country. Today, the Kingdom of Thalassa continues to thrive with hundreds of global citizens, its own language, a full legal system, and a detailed and troubled history. As of 2023, there were 157 proud Thalassans. Number 10. The Republic of Molossia. Found in the Nevada desert, the Republic of Molossia is a 9.8-acre, 4-hectare property where President Kevin Baugh permits visitors on certain days between April and October. Tourists can go through the various government offices, look at the Republic's currency, and learn about the naval fleet, even though the coast is hundreds of miles away. Just don't show up unannounced. Number 9. Bir Tawil. If you're brave enough to face the harsh desert, you can go to Bir Tawil. It straddles the border between Egypt and Sudan, but curiously, neither country claims it. Nobody would actually want to live there, so maybe it's more trouble than it's worth. But if you want to visit maybe the last truly stateless place on Earth, this most extreme of places could be for you. Number 8. The Sahrawi Arab Democratic Republic. Across the continent lies the Western Sahara. As you'd expect, not many people live here, but it's still the subject of a territorial dispute. Most countries recognize it as part of Morocco, but the self-proclaimed Sahrawi Arab Democratic Republic actually controls it. Like in similar cases, there's a dotted line on Google Maps, with Western Sahara listed below it. If you're brave enough to go, you might find it as one of the best kiteboarding places on Earth. Number 7. The Murawari Republic. The self-proclaimed Murawari Republic is located in Australia. In 2013, it declared its independence over a triangular-shaped territory that stretches over 6,300 square miles, 16,000 square kilometers, and straddles the border between Queensland and New South Wales, Australia. No country recognizes it, but the Murawari people claim it as a homeland. The fact that most of the inhabitants are non-Indigenous could be a problem, though. Fortunately, it's safe to travel to. Australia's Kulgoa National Park is there, so you might as well stop and visit. Number 6. The Principality of Cyborga. Ever heard of the Principality of Cyborga? Back in the 1960s, Giorgio Carbone, the former head of a flower growers co-op, dug into the town's history and noticed something strange. Italy unified in the 1800s, but Carbone couldn't find any proof the Cyborga was ever officially sold to the Kingdom of Sardinia in 1729, like Italy claims. He declared himself His Tremendousness, the prince of a forgotten micronation, and set out to build the next Monaco. He sadly passed away in 2009, and Italy still controls this place, but the dream lives on. Number 5. Christiania. Europe has its own sort of slab city, and it's right in the middle of things. Christiania was founded in 1971 by hippies squatting in a former army barracks. For a long time, the place balked at obeying any rules. It has its own flag after all. But it began to buy the land it was on in 2012 as mandated by the Danish government. It was infamous for its cannabis market until 2024, when it was forced to shut down after deadly shootings in 2016 and 2023. It was physically dug up to prevent any such incidents from taking place again. Maybe that's why you won't find Christiania as anything other than a neighborhood in Copenhagen on Google Maps. Number 4. Greenland. Greenland has all the things you think would be required to exist as a recognized country: a large landmass, a sparse but stable population, and a free, democratic government. But it was a full part of Denmark until 2009, when Copenhagen granted it self-rule. It's still not recognized by any UN member state, though, despite the Greenlanders' desire for independence. Disputes about its status as the Arctic ice melts and new trade routes open up could be interesting. Number 3. Donetsk, Ukraine. Donetsk is the capital of the so-called Donetsk People's Republic, which broke away from Ukraine with Russian support in 2014. It was supposedly annexed by Russia in September of 2022. Almost all UN member states recognize it as Ukrainian territory, though. You might have been able to travel here once and see what the fuss was about, but since it's now one of the most dangerous places in the world, it's probably not a good idea. Number 2. Luhansk, Ukraine. Luhansk broke away from Ukraine in 2014 as well, becoming the Luhansk People's Republic with Russia's backing as well. Russia recognized it just before it invaded Ukraine, and then claimed full annexation of it in 2022. Some sources claim that Luhansk and Donetsk became North Korea-like statelets once the full-scale invasion of Ukraine began. So while you won't find this place on any map, other than a Russian one, you should avoid it, because these things really are happening. And finally, number 1. Taiwan. By far, the most important place that often gets left off a map but totally exists is Taiwan. Most countries don't recognize it and leave it off their official maps to avoid angering China, but China doesn't control it, and the 23 million people that live here don't want it to. China does, though, and because this place is the heart of the world's semiconductor industry, everyone has a lot to lose. This is far more than a dispute about what exists on a map. The world's balance of power is at stake here. Thanks for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you want to see more videos like this, then please consider subscribing and turn on notifications. It really does make a difference. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time on MapPack.